to the next part of the forum. We'll hear from two speakers who are involved in developing responses to care for our common home within their respective parishes. Our first speaker is Robin Humphery from the Care for Our Common Home group at Our Lady of the Assumption Parish in Cheltenham and St Agnes Parish High. So thanks very much, Rob, and I'll hand over to you.
Well, thank you, Phil. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Rob, as Phil said, and it's delightful to be joining you, with you this evening. I'll be sharing with you the OLA and the St Agnes Parish responses to Laudato Si over the past few years. Now, late in 2016, the idea of forming a Laudato Si group was suggested by actually Phil and Adrian, and so we formed. Our purpose was to find out what this new encyclical was evangelising and what our commitment might be in response. I think in a capsule I could say that at first reading we were all blown away, by the immensity and scope of this absolutely life-changing document. So hence in 2017, we met to further our understandings. Fortunately, we had the support and enthusiasm of our parish priest, Father Matheson, and the pastoral associate, Francis North. So spurred on by their encouragement, we spent the first number of months, familiarising ourselves with the text, reading chapter by chapter, discussing, unpacking, and questioning, whilst all the way along finding the deeper spiritual connections impacting on our own faith journeys. We realised we needed time. So along with our absorption of the multitudinous scope of the text, we sprang into action because we were really keen to get going. The social justice group was an obvious start, so we strongly supported and promoted the many social justice group initiatives. Activities such as the Million Stars Project, which highlighted the need for worldwide solidarity against violence. We actively encouraged greater focus on reconciliation developments in our nation with our First Nations peoples. You can see there also we aided the group's refugee action drives and domestic violence slave trade events. We ran a number of International Women's Day focused luncheons that were highly successful and very well attended. One of the first activities we were involved in was the planting of many native plants at the front of the church property. And hopefully in future, this wide tract of land could be further used, looking towards creating a communal garden. Thanks, Phil, for the next slide. On this next slide, I'll run through some of the practical tasks that we embraced. That the parish meeting room hall kitchens adopt sustainability guidelines like no plastics, eco-friendly project use, dishwashing reduction cycles, and the rostering of regular waste management group. Focus mornings, morning teas that introduced available services, like the Red Cycle project and the Kingston Council waste management rules. The next we turned our attention to liturgy. We included prayers for creation, well-being, justice and compassion in weekly petitions, introduced new hymns, highlighting stewardship and appreciation of our common home. Early on also, Adrian Foley suggested we produce a bi-monthly bulletin. In conjunction with ourselves, we familiarised parishioners with the encyclical and provided useful tips, e.g. like how to recycle, because a lot of us didn't know, walking in the parks and taking time out to meditate the beauty of creation. And during COVID, of course, COVID-19 helped, with this activity greatly and allowed people a bit more time to devote to reflection. Speaking of COVID-19, as it began to encroach, we wanted to continue, so we did so by monthly meetings on Zoom. The next slide, I think, Phil. Now, at the beginning of our formation, we realised that the importance of including our young. So we approached the schools. First, we introduced ourselves and explained our purpose and vision. We initiated joint school parish talks with the council, a sustainability officer, and we invited Pat Long, who addressed children and the parishioners to raise further understanding of our need for the care for creation. School principals were met and discussions on solar power and waste management ensued, and further funding negotiations are ensuing. With the leadership of Tony French, the children formed Warriors on Waste and were very enthusiastic to carry out many children's ideas in the school. We also approached the social justice group, and they formed a social justice youth group, who took on being ambassadors, for justice and action as well. Finally, we encouraged the FATE committee to take on ecological friendly policies, and at the last FATE, they began to develop some policies there. On the next slide, thanks, Phil. You can see that our ideas for the future. COVID-19 has curtailed many endeavours considerably, but we do plan to push ahead with gusto. We've adopted the LSAP that Jackie was referring to with the support of Father Allen, and that's going to be an enormous project and an exciting one as well. We've also reached out to St Dom's and other parishes and other committed groups locally, the Bayside Climate Action Group and the exciting Port Phillip Eco Centre, and now all of you who are joining us this evening. A celebration of Creation Expo may be in the wind, and our continued commitment to creating and establishing an increasingly carbon-free greener parish is uppermost in our planning. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll now hand you back to Phil.
Thank you. I need to unmute. Thank you, Robin, for that presentation. And clearly we can see that Our Lady of the Assumption Parish has been working fairly hard over the last few years, doing lots of good things. So we'll defer